Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. My name is Ashley Dowsard, and I'll be hosting today's session. Today I'm joining you from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country. I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters, and community. I would like to pay my respect to them, their cultures, and elders past and present. To begin, I have some quick housekeeping messages. First, to access today's slides, you can visit our Webinar Resources Hub at tpb.gov.au/webinar-hub. We'll also email you a copy of the slides following the webinar. Today's webinar counts towards your continuing professional education, and you can claim 1 hour for attending. We'll issue an attendance certificate to those of you staying online for the webinar today. Let's now look at what we're going to be covering today. We'll look at the cybercrime environment, the top threats, ways to defend yourself, including the Essential 8, and where to get help. Then to finish up, we'll answer some of the common questions we received during the webinar. In that regard, we have David from our technology team joining us. He'll be responding to your questions as we go, so make sure you send them through via the Q&A. To find the Q&A, simply hover your mouse over the screen and a range of icons will appear on the bottom of your screen. I want to note that we have a lot of people online today, so we may not get to all your questions. However, we will answer FAQs via our Webinars Resource Hub. So keep an eye on our website and we'll share responses to the commonly asked questions there. You can also use the chat function to speak with other participants. We won't be monitoring the chat closely throughout the presentation. So if you need a response from us, be sure to use the Q&A. To disable any of these functions, simply hover over the relevant icon and unselect Show Preview. Now, to kick things off, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, the TPB's Chief Technology Officer, Craig Woodburn. Welcome, Craig. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks very much, Ashley, for that great introduction. I'm sure you'll agree the communications team at the Tax Practitioners Board are incredibly professional. And now you're over to me. We've planned this webinar to build awareness of cyber risk and encourage you to always keep cybersecurity front of mind. We want to provide you with an update of the current cybersecurity environment and explain some specific threats. We want to help you be as safe as we can. Now, I just want to sort of stress, cybersecurity is a responsibility of all of us, and our economy really depends on you doing a great job with cybersecurity. Now, that sounds like I'm giving you a lot of pressure there, but you're not alone. There are plenty of people that can help you, and starting today with the advice that we'd like to give you and help you get started. So I trust that today you'll find as a useful session, and we will try and cover really only the basics during our presentation section of this webinar, and then we will give you an opportunity to ask some questions. So I may, even if we get stuck for time, try and skip over a few concepts to try and give you the opportunity to actually ask your personal questions. So I challenge you now, start thinking about what questions you might like to ask. So let's set the scene first by looking at the cybercrime environment. The Australian Signals Directorate, or the ASD for short, are responsible for leading the Australian government's efforts to improve cybersecurity. They're actually now in the business of helping small businesses, large and medium businesses, as well as government. So they've broadened their remit to help everybody in the Australian economy to protect themselves from attackers. So their role is to help Australia become the most secure place to connect online, and their latest cyber threat report shows that cybercrime is reported every 6 minutes in Australia. With the average impact of a cyber attack for a small business being around $46,000, and medium businesses as high as 100,000. Cybercrime is now worth more than the international drug trade. That's crazy, isn't it? And if it were measured as a country, cybercrime, which is predicted to inflict damages of around $10.5 trillion globally by 2025, it would be the world's third largest economy after the US and China. It's astounding, I think you'll agree. Cybercrime costs include damage and destruction of data, stolen money, lost productivity and disruption to business, theft of your intellectual property and your personal financial data, fraud, forensic investigation, restoration and deletion of hacked data and systems, and even your whole business's reputation. So you can see there's a lot of money to be made by cyber criminals, and these statistics show that cybersecurity is an important concern for every organization, no matter how large or small you are. In fact, the smaller the organization you're in, the more vulnerable you may be. And as tax practitioners, it's not missed on us, the Tax Practitioners Board, that you have a huge amount of personal information on your clients that could be valuable to a cyber criminal who could then attack you or the practices that you're working with. So yes, this is a soft target for many cyber criminals. The threats that are existing in the industry are now becoming more sophisticated every year, and it's not a matter of if anymore often, it's a matter of when and how you can make sure that the damage is limited and that you have a recovery strategy. One of the main reasons that we're seeing for this is that we're living more of our lives online, especially after the pandemic. And we also know that a lot less than a quarter of breaches, scams, and fraud are actually even reported. So I also think it's important to note that it's not just the financial impact that impacts people, but there's damage to personal identity and reputation, which can have a huge impact on your emotional and psychological well-being. And that's heartbreaking. So we can see that we want to normalize these conversations to remove the stigma about cybersecurity. So remember, it's important to report if something does go wrong, and we'll talk about that later. It gives better visibility about what's going on in the marketplace, and it helps others to avoid the same threat you've experienced. So let's have a look at the top threats to look out for now. ScamWatch data shows that the main delivery methods of cyber attacks are actually smartphones and email, which we're all very dependent on, I'm sure you'd agree. The top three cyber crimes or cybercrime types for individuals include, firstly, identity theft, secondly, online banking fraud, and thirdly, online shopping fraud. For businesses, these threats are slightly different. Email compromise, business email compromise fraud, and online banking fraud. Importantly for us here today, the finance industry consistently reports as one of the industries with the most data breaches of all sectors. So as you can see, cybersecurity is something we all need to address and be aware of. And now that we've set the scene, I don't want you to think that it's all just doom and gloom. In fact, that's far from the message I want to share with you today. By participating today, you'll become familiar with resources to keep learning about this topic and the other organizations that are out there to help you. So please, 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 please don't feel that you can't address cybersecurity. Now, I want to first touch on the motivations of cyber criminals. So, who is the typical hacker? We've all seen the images depicted in movies and the media where cyber criminals look like delinquents, wearing hoodies, perhaps some teenagers uh, working in the mother's basement. But the reality is they're often more sophisticated than that, and they're often more like a call center or a traditional business. They're profit driven, they pay salaries, and they have processes in place to improve their scams. It's important to realize that as business, they don't care about our financial or personal situations. The bottom line is that if you've got any device that's connected to the internet, then you're a target. It's just merely a business prospect for them, and it's incredibly lucrative. So unfortunately, it's going to continue. In some instances, I would say that the people who are attacking are even sponsored by foreign governments. So we're talking about well-resourced people who are out there to damage the Australian economy and damage your business in the process. So motives, what motivates these people? Firstly, as I said before, it's financial gain. 41% of attacks demand a ransom. It's about disruption. These hackers don't care about money or data. These particular hackers, they are driven by a specific purpose. They take it upon themselves to expose a so-called injustice, and they're looking for any way to make their point heard. There's spamming, which is potentially malware could take over your web browser systems or overwhelm you with unwanted ads. And it's from this that scammers can then steal passwords and use your email or your social media accounts to spam others to sell products. We've all seen these types of attacks in the news. Then there's espionage, and these attackers are seeking protected information. Both governments and private organizations can be victims of information theft and or intellectual property theft. And the information stolen can then be used themselves or sold on sold for strategic advantage for others. And then the final motivation that we can see here is some hackers actually enjoy this. They're simply a challenge and they're motivated by fun. For these people, the motivation is simply to gain experience. Crazy but true. So finally, some cyber attacks are triggered by outsiders, organized crime, and insiders. Um, According to a data breach report by Verizon recently, most breaches, in fact, 70%, are caused by outsiders, but organised criminal crime groups accounted for 55% of these breaches. So first, let's talk about how we're hacked, and that the most common way that we've already talked about is email. So maybe if you could give us a thumbs up if you've received a suspicious email in the last week. Surely there'll be many of us who have. Wow. I'm hoping you can see that too. Heaps of us. Okay, thank you. I'll wait for those. I'll let those thumbs keep coming. So there are a number of ways that email attacks are perpetrated. First, I want to look at business email compromise, or we call it BEC, business email compromise, BEC. You might remember at the beginning of the webinar, I mentioned that this is one of the top 3 threats that businesses face. Well, what is a business email compromise? Let's define it first. It's where a malicious actor compromises an organization via email. So a criminal might target the organization and try to scam them out of their money or their goods or credentials. So user names or passwords. They also target employees trying to reveal other confidential information. So business email compromise is really a form of spear phishing. We would call it spear phishing. So they're phishing, trying to get some information, trying to catch you by making it look like their email is legitimate when in fact it's not. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, only a very small fraction of Beck financial losses are ever recovered. So it's important that we understand these attacks and try to avoid them. So let's move on and look at phishing attacks because they're simply a type of phishing attack. Let's break this down further and look at the types of phishing attacks. So phishing attacks are a practice of sending fraudulent communications that come from a reputable source or appear to come from a reputable source, and usually through email. So although sometimes by SMS too. So in a phishing attack, the bait is made to look as realistic as possible. So if you see that email, there are some clues you can look for, but it will look authentic. The goal is usually to steal sensitive data like your credit card, or try to get you to log on to a service and expose your username and password. That's a very common phishing attack where someone will give you a link to their website and say, please log on. Their website looks exactly like the real thing. In fact, I think I had one recently that actually looked quite a lot like the MyGov website. And before you know it, you've typed in your MyGov username and password, and then the hackers have that information. They use brands, logos, links that look correct, but they're misleading or they're fake. They often have a sense of urgency. That's really quite common to actually say you need to act now, and they're trying to prevent you from considering your actions carefully. Common phishing attacks that I've seen, or I'm sure you've seen, include an email pretending to be from your bank. If you don't receive one of them in every 3 or 4 weeks, surely you're left out. One that might try to capitalize on the success of your favorite sporting team and offer you fake websites to purchase tickets, or any of those sorts of things. There's so many different types of. Another one would be probably one that actually talks about. Common one is one that talks about gift cards. You received a free award because you're somebody's favorite customer. I think one from Bunnings recently was one that I received, where I just had to give them some details and they'd give me a Bunnings credit. All great attempts to try to get people to forfeit their own personal information for not for your benefit, but for the benefit of a hacker. Now, imagine if the email was addressed to someone in your accounting practice or your tax practitioner practice. The name used might be correct, and their work title might be even correct. They might have done a bit of research. They might even pretend to be from your company's bank and even use the name of your trusted loan officer in your organization or your trusted finance officer. This type of email is one that's a bit better researched, and it's not that uncommon, and it's called a spear phishing attack. And this is the precise method used to get your normal sort of screening approach to be let down, and for you to assume the email's legitimate. The technique isn't limited to email either, by the way. This can also be used for SMS. You can protect yourself from these attacks by being aware and training staff to recognize the common traits of a phishing attack. Often, but not always, there'll be spelling errors. There'll be the URL link will be spelt incorrectly. I would never, if you can, never ever click on a link in an email, even if it's from a legitimate provider. Just navigate to the website yourself. Much more sensible thing to do, and you're much more likely to avoid to stop your attackers. Email and browser security are important, of course, and as is malware protection, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, as I just mentioned, one of the goals of phishing attack is to install malware on your computer. Now, what is malware? What does that mean? So, malware is really just short for malicious software, and it's software that's used to harm your computer. As soon as an attacker, can get you to install their software on your computer, I'm going to make a pretty big leap here and say they own your computer. They own everything on your computer. As soon as you've been able to get somebody to install some software on their computer, that person, that the hacker now owns that computer. And the reason I say that is that the software on your computer that's installed can now access all your banking details, all your browsing history, your passwords half the time, so much information about you, all your emails. They might even be able to um, redirect your emails to them in an ongoing manner. So this is a real risk. Malware is a huge risk. Malware is often distributed by email, but it can also be distributed by websites, and often malware can be rolled up into legitimate software. So you might find that you want to download Google Chrome, for example, and you go to a website you've never seen before. You download Google Chrome, so you download Google Chrome from, Hackers Are Us instead of getting it from Google.com, and um, Google Chrome for sure installs, but along with Google Chrome, you get some malware. And so this can look legit, taste legit even, but it's toxic for your organization or even your personal, your personal computer. And for this reason, I would say, if you can, the best way to protect yourselves from this risk, one of the best ways, apart from being aware of the emails and seeing them come, will be to make sure that only a very limited number of people in your organization and even in your home have access to install software. So that if you do receive one of these malware emails, or you go to a website that's got some malware and someone's downloading Google Chrome because they want the latest browser or Firefox or whatever else it is, you're actually getting the real Google Chrome from the real Google website rather than potentially getting a Trojan horse or a piece of malware. So other types of malware, we're talking about Trojans, which basically look like something else, and it's the proverbial Trojan horse from ancient days, where it looks like something that it's not, and there's something else hidden inside. Um, so that might be the Google Chrome example I just gave you. There could be viruses and worms, which are other malicious programs that infect files. There could be keyloggers. A keylogger is a really horrible. Sorry, just have a drink for a second. Keyloggers are a horrible piece of software that's a bit of malware. And what they do is they actually capture passwords that you type on your computer and then send those passwords off to the hacker. So not only have they gained access to your computer, but they're now harvesting passwords and getting access to any service that you use. And that could include your bank account, or it could include other systems that have sensitive information to you. Ransomware is another one which we'll talk about in a moment, but it's quite common, and would have seen in the news too. So you can protect yourself by, as I said earlier, by only installing files that you need and sourcing them from well-known and legitimate app stores. As I said, other things you can really do to avoid this risk are, don't download programs from other websites that are not the real provider. Don't click on online ads to download applications. Be very careful about clicking on email links. Try to avoid it at all costs. And install applications. Don't install applications that you receive from contacts. So if I send you an email that says, "Hi, I'm Craig. Here's a great program for you. Why don't you try it out?" Don't necessarily assume that because the email appears to come from me, that it does, and don't necessarily assume that that email is in your best interest to click on that link and install that software. So make sure that you're in charge of software that's installed on your computer. Now let's look at ransomware. First, well, ransomware is software that that can be used to encrypt or lock your data behind a secret code or a passcode or a key. Without that code, your data then becomes completely inaccessible and you're frozen out of your own files. This has happened, and it's even happened to tax practitioners in the past. So don't think you're immune from this problem. Worse, the malware author will include a threat, often a short window of time, and their demands might be that they're going to destroy your information or that they're going to release the whole bunch of information. Could be an extortion attempt where they might say, we'll release all your customer data out on the internet for everybody to see and embarrass and destroy your reputation. So this is a horrible type of attack. I don't want to sort of excite you here and get you upset. It's not all doom and gloom, but there are things you can do to protect yourself from this risk. And and I would say probably the one that I've told you so far is all about being very careful of the type of software that you've got installed on your machine. Make sure that the software comes from a reputable source and that it's been downloaded from a site that you can trust. I think we might go further to now look at suspicious email. Let's look at an example of a suspicious email. You may be able to recognize some of the red flags in this example that we've shown on the screen. You can see it's a reasonably well-written email and that they've used the TPB branding. But you can also see, firstly, it's not from a TPB email address, tpb.com.au. There's no official greeting. They've requested some sort of personal information. They've made it urgent. I'm hoping you're seeing the pattern here. They've asked you to click on a link, and there's no TV sign off, and the logo used is actually slightly incorrect. So there's all different items that would make you suspicious of this email. Even just one or two of those would be enough for you to not trust this email. And as I said earlier, as soon as you're getting invited to click on a link, big no-no. These red flags come in a whole bunch of different ways, and we've made this easy, this example, but other times it won't be easy for you to tell. So um, they always have one thing in common though, and that's usually that this is an urgent request. It's often why reasonable people become unreasonable with these types of attacks. Remember, scammers are very good at working out how to manipulate your emotions, and these things are really key to pay attention to. And one of the tips I always give to people here is don't respond to these types of emails. Slow down, take your time, especially if there's a threat. If you're not sure, you can always pick up a phone and call us on a publicly listed phone number, not the phone number in the email, please. Look us up on our website. Look us up in the white yellow pages. We even have them anymore. Look us up on the internet. Find our phone number and call us. The other thing to point out here is just with the next slide, please, Ashley, is QR codes. QR codes might look like just a harmless thing that you do on a mobile phone at a concert or whatever. QR codes are simply another link. So don't trust them. What's the yellow pages? Thanks, Craig. Good point. Yeah, so QR codes are just as dangerous as a web link. So everything I've said so far about web links apply to QR codes. Let's look at some everyday tips. The best and simplest resource to help you get started with your cybersecurity, in my opinion, is the Essential 8. So the Australian, well, it's the Australian Signals Directorate, but they've actually sort of branded themselves recently with the Australian Cyber Security Centre, and it's all the Department of Defence. So these guys have your best interests at heart. Believe them, and believe me. They have developed a series of 8 essential items associated with cybersecurity. So, firstly, Um, and it's really for small and medium businesses just as much relevant as to government and government agencies and government organisations. So, um, firstly, install and maintain antivirus and anti-malware software on your computers. Um, if you've got a Windows computer, the built-in antivirus and anti-malware software built into Windows is more than sufficient, and in fact, it's considered an industry leader. So you don't necessarily have to go out and find other software, but it depends on what operating system you're using. If you're using Linux or Mac OS, then you may need to do that. Deploy firewalls on your workplace computers and your workplace networks is another strategy. Ensure this is a really, really big one. Ensure that your computer operating system, including all the programs that run on your computers, are getting the latest security updates. Often that's simply a matter of setting a setting on your computer to say automatically download and install updates when they're ready, because it will only get those updates from a reputable source, and that's the best way to make sure that if there's vulnerabilities in your software and in the browsers that I've talked about a moment ago, it really doesn't matter what browser you're using, whether you're using Safari, um, whether you're using Edge or Chrome or Firefox, whatever browser you're using, there will always be frequent vulnerabilities that will pop up and frequent software updates to address those vulnerabilities. And if you have that vulnerability for a long period of time without updating your computer, that period of time is as long as you become vulnerable to attackers, who because those vulnerabilities become published as soon as that patch or that software update gets issued, and then all of a sudden there'll be people out there, and they call it weaponizing. They're actually trying to turn that vulnerability into a weapon against the general public. It sounds a little bit sensational, I know, but this is a real risk and a real threat. And these people, it's not an individual attack. They actually have computers helping them. They're able to do this much faster than you're thinking. They don't have to individually focus on you. Another item here is that we really need to back up regularly. This is really critically important. Um, and I think I saw somebody mention in a comment before that I saw come up on the screen a minute ago. This is another one. Enable multi-factor authentication wherever you can. And I'm going to even go one step further than that and say, try and use multi-factor authentication that's not using SMS. So you've got SMS on your mobile phone. If you have an option to use Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, oh, there's a lot of different authenticators out there, right? Use one of those apps instead of using SMS, because somebody can often read your SMSs on your phone, in that coffee shop or whatever, um, or if they get a hold of your phone. And the other thing is, if some people can actually hijack the SMS on your phone by hacking the phone network, and that's actually there's plenty of examples of that occurring, and people losing hundreds of thousands of dollars through that type of attack. So, yeah, backing up regularly, using multi-factor authentication, really important. And but important to show you, just I think this is statistic comes from Microsoft. MFA, if you use multi-factor authentication, even SMS, you're going to block probably around about 99% of modern cyber attacks. Isn't that huge? 96% of bulk phishing attacks and even 70% of even targeted attacks. So multi-factor authentication is probably one of the best lines of defense that you've got against hackers. But as I said, yeah, if you can use something that's other than SMS, that's good. I am looking keenly to see when the Australian banks start using authenticator apps instead of SMS, because that is a risk that we just need to be wary of. Um, there are lots of other multi-factor authentication techniques. People use passkeys, they use biometrics, fingerprints on your phone, for example, or on your computer, authenticator apps, email, voice calls. Again, I would say the emails and the voice calls try to not use. You want to use an authenticator app if you can. In fact, I think my bank might use, if I ever called my bank, they actually verify that it's me using the bank's app on my phone, um, as the way that they check. They don't actually use SMS. Um, the other thing that probably worthwhile mentioning is with passwords, our way of thinking about passwords changed in recent years. We actually don't necessarily think you have to change your password every month, but that you do need to have a really solid password that people can't guess or work out. And the reason we say that is, um, if when you change your password every month, you tend to do things like pick a pattern, and you'll find that, um, there'll be a, hello 123, hello 124, hello 125, or 456, and then when that doesn't work, you might start adding exclamation marks on, and it becomes, you're not really getting any stronger password, are you? You really simply, uh, you know, uh, just adding, you're following the motions of changing your password. So passwords, here are some of the hints for that one. Um, well, firstly, you could use passphrases rather than passwords. So use random words. And you can make that then particularly, you could make that passphrase a bit longer than your normal password would be, which makes it harder for any computer to try and guess your password. So really, the longer the better. Um, Another one would be to make the password unpredictable. So you could include special characters, numbers, even if the service you're using on the internet with this password doesn't require such extra characters, it would be advisable for you to use them if you can. Um, because all of what this does, it actually makes it harder for computers to guess. And when you're in an office with multiple employees, ensure that everyone has the access that they need to do their jobs rather than sharing an account. Definitely a big no-no. Now let's go to some more everyday tips. Uh, Other things that you can do include protecting your client records using encryption, um, being careful of email attachments and web links, as I've said, and even voice calls. People can pretend to be other voices. You can use AI now to uh, to sound like one of your customers. So don't just assume, oh, that sounds like Craig, so it must be Craig. Uh, Ensure that staff are educated not to click on links, as I've said before. So all the things that we're sharing with you, share it with your staff. It's all good stuff. Don't download software from an unknown web page, etc. We've already talked about all these things, but never get out a username or a password. And the other one is, I'm not sure if other people have been using password management apps. There are a number of them out on the market, and um, they're quite reputable. Check that you're getting a trustworthy one by doing a bit of research. That's not very hard, but rather than me recommending a couple of brands, I just sort of tell you, just do your research. You'll find it very easy to find a good one. And we use them in our organisation, and most organisations do. Now let's look at the essential eight. Uh, we are running short on time, so I am going to try and speed up a little. Uh, there are eight items, of course, as the name suggests. The first one's application control, and this one actually protects you a little bit um, against the issue that I talked about earlier, where people might install some software on one of your organization's computers. Um, Not every bit of software that you put on a computer needs to be installed. Sometimes you can run a bit of software without actually installing it. What application control does is it says that here's a list of programs that the person who uses this computer can run. Anything outside of this list cannot be run. So um, application control is extremely easy to do, um, and it protects you from that risk. Full stop. It's gone. The next one, patching applications, and I'm going to pair it with the patching operating systems on the other side of the page there, is, as I've said already, really easy to apply. Just click on the buttons that say automatically update Windows or whatever you're using, Office, etc. Chrome, and let it do its job. Um, and then you're making sure that you don't have vulnerabilities. Next, we have configuring Microsoft Office macros, and that's because Microsoft Office macros can be received via email, and they've got code inside that macro that could do bad things to your computer. So that's a simple setting on your computer. When you get a macro coming in via email, or even just macros full stop, if you don't use them in your organization, just have those macros blocked from being able to execute because they don't necessarily come from a trusted source. There are lots of fine details in terms of how you can organize all of that, and you can create locations on your network where you have safe macros that people can run if you do use macros. But yes, macros are a potential attack. We call it an attack vector or an attack method. Um, User application hardening. This is where we might um, enable some of the best security features in your software. Um, for example, Outlook might have the ability to look for um, uh, junk emails or spam emails and filter them out. Your email software might have that, or your antivirus software might have that. If you have all those features, turn them on. Would be the obvious answer there. Restricting administrative privileges. Yes, I have seen this one a number of times where there's a particular function that a number of people in the office need to do, and it's set up on the computer system that you need an administrative account that gives you administrative access to the computer to be able to do that task. So now you give everybody an administrative account. I'm hoping that you can see straight through that strategy. It's a really bad strategy. Work out how you can actually give people the permissions to do what they need to do without giving administrative privileges. You want as few administrative accounts as you can that allow people to circumvent the protections that you've got on your computer systems. And then finally, as I said, multi-factor authentication. I think I've given a bit of a thrash already, and regular backups are really important as well. Uh, let's just have a quick look at the essential eight maturity levels. I don't think we'll probably delve too much into this, but for each of the essential eight items that we just looked through, there are a number of maturity levels. There's maturity level 0, which basically means you're not doing any of the recommendations that the Department of Defence are giving you to protect yourself from that risk. Maturity level 1 might be that you're doing the superficial bits and pieces. Maturity level 2 means you've got a reasonably high level of maturity, and probably most government agencies would ensure that they're at maturity level 2, and then maturity level 3 would be for people who are, they have a high risk target particularly, and they're particularly mature organisations that have gone through ensuring that they made all of the essential eight recommendations. So yeah, working out where you are on the essential eight and working out your plan, which could be a gradual plan that might take a period of time to actually ensure that you're increasing maturity over time rather than eroding your maturity is a really worthwhile thing to do. So yeah, I think that brings us to the conclusion of the main items I wanted to discuss today. And as I said, I've left us 15 minutes where we can talk about any questions or any other topics that people would like to cover. So very happy to answer questions. And but I guess the key thing that I want you to take away here is, and we'll give you a copy of these presentation notes. Cybersecurity is important. I hope you've gotten that. Cybersecurity is easy to understand. I hope you've gotten that. And there are real strategies that you can follow easily without spending a huge amount of money that will actually help your organization stay safe. And then the other last thing I want to tell you is there are plenty of people in the industry that will help you. Some of them will even help you for free. And others, so some that would help you for free, for example, would be the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, but there are others as well. And then there are plenty of vendors that are particularly made for all levels of small and large business to help you tighten up your cybersecurity. This is as you know, this is a growth industry in Australia, and it would, if you've got children who aren't sure what to do for a career, can I put in a plug for cybersecurity, because we need to make sure that Australia's industry is protected and safe, and that Australia prospers. And part of that is ensuring that we have cyber sorted out. So go to the floor for any questions if people want to suggest some.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Craig. That was really helpful. Lots of great information. And just your enthusiasm is fantastic. And I think it really helps us all understand what's going on out in the cyber environment at the moment. So, we have got a lot of questions, some really good ones that I want to share with you. So, let's have a look at some of those now. I've got a question here from Julie. What a great name, Julie. She's asking, what about risk in share files on Dropbox or SharePoint? What if the other person that's sharing the file isn't as cautious as you are? Do you have any advice on that, Craig?
Oh, that's a multifaceted question. Firstly, if you're sharing your information with somebody else over SharePoint or Dropbox, um, you don't know what they're going to do with the information. So you do need to make sure that you're sharing with someone you trust. And and often that might mean, if it's a mailing service that you're using or somebody's service, you might want to ask them, how do you protect yourself from cybersecurity risks? What are you doing to protect my information? You need to be confident that you're choosing someone who you can trust, just like you would choose a plumber or an electrician that you trust. Um, the other item there though is just be wary if you're using, say, Dropbox. Dropbox servers are not even hosted in Australia. So your data, if you're putting it up into Dropbox, is not even located in our country. Where and then we have another seminar that we do at times, all about cloud computing. And but the risk here is that once your data leaves the Australian continent, it's no longer covered by Australian law. And privacy laws and all those sorts of things don't apply, may not apply where your data is hosted. So just be careful with wherever you're sending your data, that it's actually being stored in Australia. So yeah, just a bit of research for you, really.
Good advice. Thank you for that, Craig. I've got a couple of people asking about cybersecurity. I'm sorry,
hmm
cyber insurance, I should say. And they're asking, is it worthwhile? Is it useful? Would you recommend people have it in place?
Oh, gee, I don't know, Julie. I'm a technocrat, not an insurer. We, I would say, yes, it's probably worthwhile thinking about it, depending on what they're covering, and depending on how expensive it is. That's really a decision you need to make based on your needs. But the one thing that I would say is, one thing somebody can take away from you that you can never get back is your reputation. Does everybody know that Optus can't be trusted with your personal information? Like, surely everybody in Australia is suspicious of Optus. Now, that was one mistake they made, and some data got out on the internet, but they're paying forever for that. Now, I'm not interested in Optus. I'm not interested in. I don't have Telstra shares, honest, but you can never get your reputation back. So I would say you can't insure against losing your reputation. Um, there's Cyber insurance is not a substitute for cyber security.
Good point. Thanks, Craig. Philip's asking us, can hackers be stopped via firewalls?
Yes, some types of hackers can be stopped by firewalls. So what firewalls generally protect us from is, when you've got a server on the internet, say your web server, and you have a firewall between that web server and the internet, you can stop people from trying to access your web server using anything but a normal um, internet request from a browser. So if they try to log into your web server, for example, that they might not be able to do that. There are other protocols, other ways of doing that, and it doesn't look like something that's come from a web browser. The firewall will block it. So this firewall is really just, it's like a gatekeeper at the front door that says only people who look like visitors can come in, legitimate visitors can come in, and everybody else who doesn't look like a legitimate visitor can't. So it's not going to protect you from everything. And what it definitely won't do is it won't protect you when you leave the house. So if you're sending you're using your users in your network are using a web service on an external website, and they're uploading their data, say they're putting your client's details into ChatGPT, and they're saying to ChatGPT, can you tell me this information about my client list? ChatGPT now knows all who your clients are and all their information. um, a firewall will not protect you from that. So, just be careful that about thinking that a firewall is going to protect you from every risk. It will protect you from some.
Thank you. The next question I've got is from James, and James asks if you could clarify, is there any possibility for hackers to access your PC without access via a click link or a downloaded software upgrade? So he's saying, in other words, is it only possible to have a cyber threat by way of opening a door for them to access
Um, that's again, that's a bit of a multi-dimensional question, Julie. Matt, sorry. The Because the computer system that you're using is constantly evolving, and say if I go with a Microsoft and Google Chrome, that'll do. Probably typifies 90% or 80%, I don't even know what the percentage is, of Australian users. Um, Google Chrome will have a new vulnerability in it every, I'd say, week to 10 days. Um, and there's a new version of Google Chrome every week to 10 days. If you haven't updated Google Chrome, instantly now there's a new vulnerability that exists. You haven't clicked on any links, you haven't done anything that looks bad. And in fact, it may be that Google Chrome don't even know about this new vulnerability yet, and they're still developing the fix for it. So yes, there are plenty of opportunities to be attacked, and that's why the Essential 8 has a whole bunch of different aspects to it, so that even if somebody manages to get you to click on that link, which you've got all these software and et cetera in place to stop, and even if it manages to get past your application control that stops that link from installing and executing some software, and somehow that software manages to execute, so they get past that second line of defense, and even if they manage to then harvest your username and your password for your Xero software or whatever. And even if they manage to compromise and get access to your data or delete it or whatever, then you've always got a backup. You know, there are lots of different problems and impacts along the line here, but this is about a multifaceted protection approach that actually has a plan B and a plan C.
Fantastic, thank you. I've got a couple of people also asking in the chat, Craig, about VPNs. So they're wondering, do we recommend using them, and do you think they're effective in slowing down cybercrime?
Well, VPNs have a lot of different purposes. If you were connecting from an untrusted location, using a network that you didn't necessarily trust. So, for example, you were down at McDonald's, or you were, I don't know, in McDonald's in China or Russia or somewhere a long way away, and you needed to access your service, ensuring that that service is encrypted. The only communications you have between that McDonald's and your systems back in Australia is encrypted, and that's what a VPN will do, a virtual private network. Um, that could be a critical part of your defense. So yes, VPNs are very useful in that context. Um, if you're using a reputable internet service, like Xero, for example, or any of those other practice management software programs, then it's almost certain that all the communications is encrypted anyway, and your data is probably encrypted at rest as well. So, that's really important anyway. But that's what that VPN comes in for. It's where you want some secure communications in an environment where the network can't be trusted.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next question I've got here is from Terry, and Terry's asking, what do you think about passwords that are generated by the browser or by your password manager apps?
Oh, I love them. Um, by the browser. Sorry. Doing well, recovering from a cold and being able to do a webinar at the same time. Thanks
You are
everybody for
doing
your
well,
patience.
thank you.
So passwords generated by well, firstly, your password software. If you've got some password software you trust, they're going to be gold. The last thing you want to do, and I didn't harp on this, but the very last thing you want to do, and I see people do this all the time, which is why I'm going to point it out, have a different password for every service you use. And what you often do when you don't use one of these password generators is you use, oh, okay, I've used hello123. For this service, I use hello124. And for this one, I use hello125. And, or even you use the same password for three different services. So your Dropbox password is the same as your SharePoint password, is the same as your, I don't know, your Facebook password. Um, Big no-no. If anyone manages to get your password somehow to Facebook, they've now got your password to everything. And so, yes, generated passwords are, I am a big proponent. Now, should you use a website, just any old website to get a password generation? Oh, gee, there are risks associated with that. They could be remembering who's asking for it and then use that against you later on. I don't know if I'd really recommend that. I'd probably rather go for a password product.
Thanks, Craig. I know what I'll be doing tonight now. I'll be changing all my passwords. Thank you for that. I've got another question here, and it's about whether if you've been infected by a virus, are there any remedies that you would suggest for people to take action against a virus that's been infecting their computer?
Wow, that's if
That's a big
somebody's got
question.
that one, you definitely need help. If you have I, I'd imagine I'm not sure if it's a hypothetical situation or if it's a real situation. I would think that if you're using Microsoft Windows and if you had virus checking software from Microsoft, the one that's built into Windows, then you're already protected against this. And any virus that gets discovered would be quarantined very quickly, and isolated. And then I would say that you're then safe. Um, and there are the links when it detects any virus, when these systems detect the viruses, they'll tell you about the virus and what residual threats there are, etc. If there are any other action that you need to follow. If you're using something else, you maybe you've installed your own virus checker and it wasn't so good, or you've turned the virus checker off, or you're using another operating system and it didn't have a virus checker included. Then my immediate action would be to say, um, get yourself a virus checker straight away, because those virus checkers will actually do more than detect viruses. They actually isolate them and destroy them. So yeah, that would be my recommendation for you. But if you're not sure, very last thing that I would recommend ever would be to leave it for tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that one. I think we've got time for a couple quick ones. I've got Greg asking here, does connecting to Wi-Fi at places such as cafes, McDonald's, etc., increase the chances of cybercrime?
Yes.
Yes, easy one. And
If you can
did you
help
want
it,
to go
don't do it.
further?
Hotspot your mobile phone if you can, and use that instead.
Perfect. Thank you. And just last question. I think we've had this a few times today, and it's around, remembering all your different passwords. How would you recommend people do that? Should they write them down? What others, things do you recommend to keep them safe and to
Oh,
remember them
password
all?
safe. I've already mentioned it. So yes, download a password safe tool. Let me give you a couple, just to get you started. But do your own research and work out what you like. There's KeePass. I think it's pronounced Keep, and then ASS, KeePass. I think that's a freebie, and it's open source, which means that if there's anybody that's found a weakness in it, everyone can see the code. If there's any weakness in it, then you've got thousands of people that are improving it and making it more secure. So an open source password safe is always going to be more secure than a closed source one. Um, there's LastPass, there's Bitwarden, There are quite a number of them, a large number. So just to Google, find one. You'll find one that's either cheap or free. Won't be a problem, and it'll protect you from. You don't want to keep a notepad on your desk with your passwords on it, and you definitely don't want to have it just stored in a flat text file on your computer. If anyone manages to get into your computer somehow, even just a visitor to your house, and physical access to your computer equals access to your computer. If they can access your computer physically and touch the keyboard, they've got access to your computer. So always think of that being, there's no absolute in terms of logging onto your computer. Then they can have access to those passwords. So yes, having it in a password safe on your computer encrypts all those passwords, and the only way to unlock it is using your master password.
Wonderful. Thank you, Craig. I think that's a great place to leave it for today. Lots of great advice, lots of things to think about, and just give you some information finally to stay in touch with us as well. So if you want some more information and you'd like to keep up to date, just go to our website at tpb.gov.au. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X. We'll have all our latest updates on there. And then also we've got TPB e-News, which is our monthly newsletter. So I highly recommend that you subscribe to that. And we do have a little column in there every week about cybersecurity and tips and hints there that Craig helps us with. So definitely recommend that you subscribe to that. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll receive notifications when we post new videos. And hopefully everyone knows by now, but we do record all of our webinars and we place them on the place them on YouTube, and you can view them there and still claim your CPE for viewing the recordings, which is really great news as well. So I just want to say a big thank you to Craig for sharing his insights today, and also thank you to David for answering those questions in the chat box. I know that you were kept very busy there. And as we said at the beginning, if we didn't get to your question today, we will endeavour to put some FAQs up on our website and address anything that we haven't covered off today. So we do hope that you found this webinar beneficial. And once again, you can claim your CPE, so 1 hour for today. And if you are interested in attending any of our other webinars, just jump on our website at tpb.gov.au/webinars. And then finally for today, we will be launching an exit survey, and we would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to give us any feedback that you have. And also, if you've got any topics that you're interested in hearing in the future, please let us know. I know that there was a couple of people today asking about different topics. So, we're always willing to hear what you've got in mind and hoping to put those into our program as well. So the survey just pops up in your browser. And as I said, it would be great if you complete that. So thank you everyone once again for attending. And we do hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe online. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everyone.